and I don't see any reasons for controlling the what do you call it? The line of life by arms. In a way, if people understood, and our Chinese colleagues and Chinese friends and other scientists around the world who monitor and work with this technology so very rapidly understand, is that very soon we see enough Chinese in center of Washington that man has to come to an agreement how not to produce any more arms. But on the other hand, we need the national forces not to be in the situation we are in Middle East at the moment. Crisis beyond imagination, but if the national government as totality don't work and have the tools to stop this horrendous work of animals, then none of us have security. But on the other hand, where do you think all these things have come from? Nations charging, draining other nations, and then not knowing. I think the best example of this abuse of a man by nation-wise comes from the island of Haiti. They were one of the first nations freed long before America, but till 4 or 5 years ago when they had a hurricane, and whatever they had, the earthquake, that they lost most of their assets. Then we found out that the French government said, you don't need to pay us any more for the freedom we gave you 200 odd years ago. So nobody said, well, how come the Dominican Republic next door is so wealthy and Haiti is so poor? And it's what just was an imaginary line on the floor. Because the French government was bleeding the nation for the freedom we gave them 250 years ago in the constitution. Over 80% of the income of Haiti was going to the pocket of the French national government. These things has to be opened up. We have to change the situation. And in being able to do changing things, man should be able to support itself now, irrespective of abuse. But on the other hand, I always say, I was talking to my wife yesterday, that me going through 30 years of this kind of work, being in such a high level and understanding so, was deliberate for me to be prepared to be able to understand how things can be and done and can be changed. There is a huge, huge progress needed to be done in understanding that here on Earth we absorb a spectrum of energies from our environment according to the air and where we are. In the space, the crafts are mono energy, near enough. Mono means single energy because you are isolated totally from outside environment. On Earth, we receive different magnetic field strength from the sun, from the moon, from the planet, from plants, from water. In a mono environment, you need a spectrum to be able to support life. So this mono, what do you call it? Singularity field will be harmful. And your body with actually breathing out the energy, whatever you want to call it, as a strength of the CO2, each time, each different cell in your body creates different field CO2 or energy that becomes, you call it CO2. All the, what you exhale is not all the same thing. So with the same proportion, what you exhale becomes different CO2 strength for you to become the food for your digestion system. In a way, your brain circulation, your blood, dictates what your digestion system for physicality needs and can be absorbed. So you become your own recycling machine. This is the only way we can support long-term life in the space. We absorb, we extract certain amount of fields from the environment, we give some back, and at the same time, the human body becomes, from its emotional part, which is the red blood cells or circulation, what it gives out as energy not needed can be used, will be used to produce the solid matter like a gas, because what you breathe out as energy is a gas. We convert it back to a gas and we feed it through for the digestion system. So in the reality, you never run out of food because you are the source of your own food. So you got to understand what's the use of hydrogen in the coming time in the reactors. You need to keep atomic hydrogen in a gas state for what I call communication lines. Atomic hydrogen in a neutron state exists throughout the universe. Copper oxide, plasma, but in gas does not exist everywhere. And if you're in an area which there is no copper oxide, you can't lose line of communication or travel. Um, Field as a ray, it gets pulled by the point of destination gravitational magnetic field strength matching. So what this means is you don't need energy to throw the light to be seen, but you receive the ray of light according to your own gravitational magnetic field, which is at your strength. This is why this nonsense about 20,000 years, 100,000 years has no meaning. What you see on the surface of or as a light of a star is literally instantaneous what the light has released. Because it's not the first time the light has been released by the star. This light is continuously released. And when you tune according to the gravitational magnetic field of the light of the sun and the earth, what you call at the night time, that you can visually link into it through the gravitational magnetic field, the strength of your amino acid, you see it instantaneously. It's a zero time. What they measure 100,000 years is in matter state of the tools which are available. But what you see as a light of the point, because your body is made of plasmatic conditions, it's a gases of matters, your field tunes to that. Man will find out that they don't see all the matters in the universe, because not even all the matters release energy in that level. There are entities which to us is like nothing, but to the other creatures, according to gravitational magnetism, are huge stars. Because we are not tuned, and the length is not or has not reduced at the length to be at our observation. When the development of the science understanding goes further, very much as we don't see all the stars till it's dark and we can see through the atmosphere, when the man knowledge and the tools become available, we will be able to see a further development in the cycle of man, which means we'll be able to see across the wall of the universes and what's in the universes. This is the transparency of receiving the information at the wavelength which we can absorb. Because the hydrogen here, let's say atomic hydrogen, let's say neutron is 10 centimeter, because that's the base fundamental. In another universe could be 30 centimeter. But that's the fundamental matter in that universe. The fields radiated at 30 centimeter by the same gravitational magnetic field is different than what is at 10 centimeter. On Earth, let's say 15 centimeter is CO2, 25 centimeter is copper oxide. So the energy of one neutron in that galaxy, in that universe, is beyond copper, which is not detectable by us. This is what man will understand very soon. Has been centered and put in the language that most of you could understand, or at least some of you could connect to old and new. We have gone from, as we said, book 1, which was the universal order of creation of matter, is speaking about the matter, antimatter and dark matter as was fashioned, that we could not be seen to be too radical. And in explaining that in the book, we brought in the principle, the true understanding of the work of a plasma, which is what we call the principal matter, the transition, and the matter. So it doesn't matter in which magnetic gravitational field strength you exist, you still live and obey the same rule. There are no quarks, up quarks and down quarks. The scientists who dreamt about these things, to me, they were a bunch of quacks who came up with the quarks. Now, we have to look at the reality. You are in a certain magnetic gravitational field. You still are from a source. It takes a time from the source for the field to reach you, which is that's the transition time, transfer time from one point to another. And at the point which you detect it, which become materialized to you, which is the matter state of the field. Doesn't matter in what strength you are. You are on human matter level or on submatter level to our detection or above our matter detection. We cannot see the two sides, but we see only what is detectable to us according to gravitational magnetic fields of the amino acids of the structure of our life on this planet. We have a very, very narrow window of detection in respect to totality of the magnetic gravitational fields of the universe. So in some cases we are wondered, we see things, and some of us detect some things and others don't do. It's just that arrangement in our amino acid is slightly different. We might have a little bit more sodium, we might have a little bit less potassium. So we see again a little bandwidth beyond others can do. But if we arrive at a point anywhere in the universe, any creation, any being, any means of intelligence and life still obeys the same system according to where they see it and materializes to them. So our teachings and the way the foundation teachings has gone and in the books sits on the universal base. Wherever you go in this universe, it's like at the moment on this planet, somehow most of us know the word yes and no, and we can communicate at least in the language of English. The knowledge we transfer to you is the language of universe. Wherever you go, nobody speaks about the quarks and mesons and whatever they've come up with. They speak about where the source is, how long it takes from the source, the fields, both in gravitational and magnetic field, to get to them, and what strength it manifests itself to them. It's very much like when you have a radio. You can go to 99, or you can go to 120 or 110. The minute you pass 99 to 99.1, you cannot hear the 99 on FM, because at that point is not detectable to the radio. So us human beings, for example, we sit at 99. But the others can go to 99 and plus 99.1. So they are aware of two fields. Is the fields the same? Exactly, there is no difference. Can we adopt systems to be able to see these different words that it can convert to our language and our way of understanding and seeing? In time, yes. The soul and the emotion does not have Hertz frequency because it works in a plasmatic magnetic field direction. It has a magnetic gravitational frequency in respect to each other, but not at the matter level that you do it, unless you change the emotion in the gravitational magnetic of the emotional part when it converts into the matter condition for movement. And then you come into a frequency. And then you decide what you want to let go and what you want to be seen to be. I have enough knowledge to wipe out any creatures, any creation anywhere in the universe. And now we will see it. We do not wipe out. We give you love and care. I bless for the soul which has to be separated from the body. But do not blame nobody except yourself. I told you I bring you, I dismantle you brick by brick till you understand the only option is peace and the correct way. We share the knowledge freely on the basis of adding to man's knowledge. And so many ways we get away from the, what do you call it, the mistakes of the past. As your understanding is growing rapidly, as you extend the knowledge, we open the doors. You only need to create one atom to release its energy, and then you can use other plasmas to reflect it. Because I left a lamp in the garden, in front of the lamp. It's been there from the first day they came here, but none of them have seen it. And I kept on asking my wife, is this lamp? She said, I said, I haven't seen it yet. She says, no. The lamp has very few LED lights. If you light it, you don't see anything in the garden. But on top of it, there is a conical reflector, which reflects the light out. It covers meters. In plasma technology, you can do the same. Don't use all your plasmas, use some of the ganses in the right way as a reflector. Then one electron will be 1 million electron light. So I hope they change their mind and they give us a Nobel Prize today for physics instead of giving to the guys for LED. The 3 Japanese won the Nobel Prize for producing LED lights 20 years ago, 17 years ago. Now we're giving a free light. They're going to give you a Nobel Prize today, Marco. This is how easy it is. Always look in the teaching, in your understanding. If I have a motor, have you seen a motor in the universe? No. Then try to analyze why and how does the universe does it. Then you find your answer. It took me over 30 years to understand the behavior of gravitational magnetic field. And as I said to knowledge seekers, how you haven't understood the creation of motion is not a problem, because millions of man and scientists for past thousands of years have understood it. And now in one go, in 10 minutes, you all understand how the motion is done. The knowledge is free, but it's got to be at the level that you understand. Then I can disperse with it. And you, Luciana, usually come up with a point to push that point. And I appreciate it. When I joke with you about it, I appreciate your input. Because you are the only group, I know how you're working. We're monitoring your work very closely. You are the only ones who sit trying to do it scientifically. But then you run into, again, in the schizophrenic between matter and plasma. Try to put the matters away. You should be able to make, by now, if you understood the way you're measuring the voltage and current, you cannot measure voltage or current with the voltmeters. You should have had a meter measurement by now. I explained to the knowledge seekers this week how to do it, if they understood. So, find yourself a high pressure pump and make yourself enough gas that you can put in 5 centimeter interface between 2 different gases. The friction between one gas of the higher order with the lower order gas should create enough friction to release enough energy to light up the whole of New York or Beijing. You don't need huge size, because once you touch the atomic structure in the gas state, you see the light according to your vision, not in physicality, in what you want to see. This is what I explained to the knowledge seekers. If you understand this position, in the future you don't need to carry the light, because you can create that gravitational magnetic field in the gas of your brain and the liquid in your brain that creates light in the direction you want to look in the dark. It's like carrying a torch in front of you. Man in the past had this knowledge, and somehow we have lost it. So we are gaining back the knowledge which was there. If you know how to change the environment, as Yvonne did, Dr. Yvonne Michel did, you could press the layers of nano layers in copper oxide wire, and you get higher voltage or whatever. Try to do that with your emotions. Try to do that with your fields in your thoughts. Then, as I said to Marco this week, is put your two hands together, facing each other, create a core, and look into it. You will see light. You will create light. Because your hand releases gravitational plasmatic fields. It becomes, hold your hands together and you see heat. You feel the heat. And that heat needs slight indication, a slight increase to become light. And you have it. We know for a fact 4 presidents on regularly weekly basis listen, top world leaders, to every workshop we put out. As they say, one of them said, it is a nighttime story I have to listen to be aware what how I have to protect my nation in what's coming up.
I
You
understand.
can use it. You can, let me explain to you. We done a test some times ago, and it's well-used practice. It's not something unknown. You you embed the GANs in a capsule like the tablets you buy, but embedding it in a special capsule which is not digestible. But as the CO2 or GANs passes through your digestion system, it changes it. Or you can use it in a specific conditions as a static position. I was talking about this with Dr. Elia this week when we were talking, that for example for prostate cancer, you insert the system inside in the rectum over the prostate, and within hours the cancer disappears more or less. I have tested this for ovary cancer and what do you call it, internal cancers, and it works very rapidly, but you have to understand the dosage and how much you change. These are the things which Dr. Elia will expand on in technology development and in the usage of the technology. What you do, because you have to find the right combination, you load your system with it, and you allow it to enter the body, and you hold it where you want until it does the effect. And then the body rejects it because it doesn't change its characteristics, but what it comes out, it has changed the environment where it was. So like a tumor becomes diluted as a liquid or as a gas, and it gets rejected by the body as a normal way. You position like a magnetic shield, magnetic bedding, and when it reaches to that point of the stomach where the tumor is, then the system stops like a magnet. You stop it, and then you allow it to do its work. And when you observe, you release it. You take the magnet away, and the container carries on floating to be rejected as a stool. Exactly what happens. This when you put oxygen in a nano-gas condition, you give enough energy, or you extract enough energy, or you push the boundary of the energy which is released by the gas material as copper, which is in the gas state, to the oxygen, that the field strength of the 2 electrons in the orbit, in the first orbit, increases enough that becomes in the minimum boundary level of the second orbit. So it behaves to be one of them. So you create an inner gas in a ring with 6 electrons, and you will behave like an inert gas. Your orbit numbers are complete. And then the 8 electrons behave as one in respect to the center proton nucleus and neutron nucleus. There is something in nuclear physics I never explained, but it's part of the structure I always work for. A lot of scientists have never understood the structure of the proton and electron. Electrons and protons and neutrons all have their own magnetic gravitational field balance strength. What does this mean? Protons, for example, in the center of a nucleus, create their own connection line, irrespective of the neutrons. And the neutrons collect their own central system. And then in balance between two, they compromise how and what more or less is needed for the whole thing to stay together, that the weaker partner, which is protons, can be kept. And that's why we see more neutrons in the heavier elements, accommodating that we can keep the structure. So to keep the structure, we need electrons and we need the protons to keep the integrity. So to keep the protons, that the electrons protect us like a defense shield technology. Electron is a defense system for the proton. First of all, absorbs any fields which come in. Secondly, it absorbs any field which is released by the proton and is fed back to it to guarantee survival. So the mechanism, central mechanism of the protons in a nucleus is independent of the central mechanism of the neutrons. We just call them neutrons and protons, a dot on the table. This is why, because nuclear physicists never understood the system. So, and then it allows the accommodation of the extra energies, neutrons, into the system that can guarantee the position of the protons, that the protons can guarantee their partner, which is electrons, to be kept and the entity to be intact. Neutrons interact with neutrons in the nucleus of matter. Protons interact with protons and in conjunction because of their link with the electrons. Neutrons have nothing to do with the operation of the electrons. So these have to accommodate themselves, and that's why the size of the nucleus grows bigger than what it should be. The theoretical physicists have brought such a mess into the nuclear industry that no scientist can put right, because images are wrong. You have to explain. I do this with the scientists who come here and they immediately understand how much they have misunderstood even nuclear physicists. My love and my care does not extend to my wife and my family, it extends to every being on this planet and in this universe in the equal measure. In your hand. If you understood what is being given to you as a knowledge, you created the gravitational magnetic field of CO2 between the copper, and keep that picture there, please. I want to tell you something about that picture. Go back here. Go back to the beginning. Go back to the beginning if you can, please. Go back to
okay, and here I want to interrupt you just a second.
Let me explain to you. Let me explain this to you. So now you manage with one plate to create a CO2, yes? And now you change the same plate, kept one plate and changes the other plate, and you manage to absorb copper oxide from the system. Now it comes a point. You have been taught, if you haven't understood up to now, the process to be able to create any material you need at any time, anywhere in the universe. If you understood what you've done, and it's just something to see some energy or some gas. If you look at the bigger picture, you can change the material on the other side, or salinity of the water. Would you like plutonium from air? Or would you like gold? People will start testing and do things, and they will see. People who have gold try to nanocoat your gold and put a gold plate in. Oh boys, you have half a kilo tonight. If you're a gold merchant, please do it and show the picture. We've done it. If you manage to put a copper, nano-coated, and a copper, and you manage to make copper oxide, gold cannot be oxidized. You receive a pure gold from air. Water will rain gold. But you have to do it in a specific way to be able to nano-coat the gold. It has a specific way to be done. This is what I showed to the knowledge seekers the other day. In a reactor in Tehran, I asked the authorities, I just want a screw. And they told me I'm crazy. I said, I make gold in the reactor. And we did make gold in the reactor because I created the condition. This is how puzzles me. You lot are so becoming narrow-minded. Open your eyes, open understanding, total understanding. This is what I keep on telling to the governments. How many tons of gold do you want in which bank we put it? Rothschilds can have as much as they like today because they can extract everything. Every single atom of hydrogen on this planet can become gold. But they can't breathe, so they need to leave it. In the star formation system, we can create the behavior of, let's say, 100 hydrogen. In the other one, we can create 100 nitrogen, and then let them interact with each other. Then we create a plasmatic condition of a, what do you call it, a protein in a nano state as a plasmatic cancer state. And then we can extract protein from anywhere the way we like, what kind of protein. Don't look at how you make a nano material of a bacteria. Look what that bacteria contains. Then you know the size of its magnetosphere according to the size and the spacing of the proton and electrons. You see, it has to have a field and only interacts through that field according to the field it creates. That the length is short of one electron. If you look at the double bond and single bond in chemistry and translate it into GANs and nanotechnology, you should be able to understand now how it's done. Because they need a field that the two plasmas can maintain and share part between each other. So if you can replicate that as a matter state, you immediately find a solution to any disease. The application for securities is so precise, so effective, that it will take them a few months to understand it, but once they start using it, you do not need to look for criminals. You can locate them sitting in Italy, even if they're hiding in the back of the jungles of South America. When a child goes missing, we don't need to wait to go and find the body of the child or find out where it is. At least we have time to save the child's life before it's murdered. We can use the order. The technology is available to us. Very much the way it's available to a dog. But now, the technology possibilities are not with the order of the clothing of the child. We can locate the child immediately. Within a matter of minutes, this technology, once completed, makes missing children, missing people with autism, matter of not having them something planted on them. But the magnetic gravitational field of the person will tell you where they are. This is the beauty of the new technology. You can twist them together. You can put 20 plates in the same container. It will not change. You still absorb CO2. It goes according to the gravitational magnetic field balance in the environment. So it should be easy for you to be able to extract whatever you need. As I said, if you can create a condition like our Chinese friend in China, they can extract all the poisons from the atmosphere of the, what do you call it, Beijing. So in the human body, when you have an amino acid, the connection of the communication lies with the carbon. But holding the amino acid as a molecular structure stays with the oxygen. Carbon has 6 electrons. Look at the oxygen. That's why when you twist carbon with its structure, it affects its property. But you cannot do that with oxygen, because when you twist it, you have 2,6. It behaves like a chameleon. It looks to be matter, but it plays a GANS game, because it can come close enough to give that effect to it. But then it stays as a communicator. So the GANS, the water in the GANS stays as a GANS. It stays as a water, but is just because it plays a chameleon, it doesn't become the environment it's in, but its part becomes connected to it.
So you are trying to say that the CO2 gas becomes CO2 nanomaterial, something like that?
No, CO2 GANS with the water behaves like a GANS, but is not GANS. Due to realignment of the gravitational magnetic field, it behaves to be, but it is not matter. It loses the matter property. It behaves as a plasma, but it keeps its electrons, and the electrons do not merge into the center. You got to understand the two hats you wear. A GANS is when you have all the magnetic gravitational field, the strength of all the protons and electrons into one basket. So nobody knows whose electron, whose proton, it's just one thing. Matter is you still have, but they have separated their hats. And in water, because of its property, gives you the image, is what I call the fool, the joker. It gives you the feel I'm a GANS, but on the other hand, because of the free electrons, it still keeps the structure behavior of the matter. It's just accidental here. Just by coincidence that water, but it's not coincident, but because of the magnetic field, it positions itself all the time. Look at the copper oxide, iron oxide. We take oxygen for a lot of things because it's the link. It can make link internally that it allows separation in the way the environment requires it. It stays as a matter in the matter environment, behaves as a GANS in the GANS environment, even though it's still in the water. It's the way what would you like to call the first orbit electrons merge into the second boundary electron ring, and they make it 8 and complete. So the element behaves as is one plasma. The energy given to, if you're a nuclear physicist, atomic physicist, you understand what I'm talking about. And that's how the change comes, that the oxygen behaves as 2. When it's in the matter state, the 2 electrons in the first orbit keep their position, and you have 6 outside. When it comes in a GANS state, when plasmatic magnetic fields are there, the 2 electrons move into the ring number 2, or you can, because the 6 outside cannot move in. So now you have 8 electrons, you have a what you call inert gas behavior. Because there is no more to come in. But from outside, it looks still like a water, but in fact, the behavior of a inert gas in a solid state, which what we call a GANS condition. It's, I don't usually go into the details of these things in explaining, because a lot of people don't understand nuclear structure. Your reactors, you have at least, or most of you have produced 3 different GANSes. Start looking at GANSes as magnets. If you don't understand the GANS, do what I did. That's why I brought these magnets on the table. Use different magnets. Consider which one is weaker. Look at the atomic structure. You have copper oxide. Copper oxide is very simple. You have CuO. So the Cu, you call it I always consider copper at 60 because it's easier for me than 63. And then you have a O, which is 16. So your material is, even if you count it at 63, is 79. You want me to go higher? You go to 79. So your plasma size is 79 according to the number of protons and neutrons which are in there. Now you work with CO2. With a CO2, you have a carbon of 12 plus 2 oxygen, which is 32. This gives you 44. This 44 should give you an indication what size the gap it is and which one you can use as a container and which one you can use as a light system. If you have the red material, which is CH3, now you have 12 plus 3 is 15. So now you start understanding the use and the way you can roughly get an indication what can be a container, what you can use to move across another, what you can use to create release light, what you can use to be storage, knowing that which one accepts more energy in what environment. Then you consider the gravitational magnetic field of your environment, which you have created. And then you put them in, or you use one as a container for the other. Now you have entered the condition which the universe works and connect with each other. Now you understand you don't need transistors of different colors and different things. Now you work with the atomic structure size. How many electrons, how many protons, how many neutrons, and how I can take a neutron and proton in a plasma condition and put 4 or 5 copper oxides together, or 4 or 5 other things, and make plutonium, gold, or whatever I need. For the first time last week, I showed to the knowledge seekers the gold which we produced in the atomic layer condition in Tehran. Aquatic environment has been cleaned up, been extracted. So this is what we showed with the GANS material, understanding the nanomaterial are solid state. GANS is in the plasma state and is more powerful. So this is another confirmation of the work which we did in Fukushima and now in Africa with Ebola.